Someone recently released 12 minutes of video on the internet. Even Maude's closest friends were horrified by what she stated in that lost episode. Admire us. It was devastating in addition to being contentious. At last, you can check out what scared CBS so much. In the past, Norman Lear would attend the event table and pay attention. Loud and irate, his father would quarrel about politics with Uncle Jack. The fights were rough, untidy, and even vicious. His father was resentful, racist, sexist, and a proud Republican. Uncle Jack was the complete opposite. He washerished justice and civil rights. They fought all the time, shouting over half-finished and mashed potatoes. Plates. When Norman was 9 years old, his father was imprisoned for 3 years for deception. However, he never forgot those family dinners. He observed how it is possible for different individuals to live together. Arguments exposed more than they concealed. How occasionally laughter broke, let the truth be known. Fake families weren't on his mind when he was building his performances years later. He was contemplating grinding those meals. That's where All in the Family originated. From where did Maude come? For one episode, Arthur appeared on December 11, 1971. She portrayed Edith Bunker's cousin Ma Finley. Ma was ill with the flu, and arrived to assist. She wasn't sweet, though. She wasn't a soft person. She was abrasive, noisy, and utterly fearless. Line for line, she battled Archie. Her speech seemed hazy. Horn. Additionally, before the East Coast broadcast of the episode was even over, Fred Silverman, the head of CBS programming, was already spoken with Lear on the phone. "There's a series in that woman," he remarked, grinned. He had been anticipating the call. After 9 months, Maude debuted on September 12, 1972. CBS, though, wasn't at ease. They were. The person in charge of standards and procedures, William Tankersley, declared to Lear that he would ruin television. That was the response to hearing toilet sounds that fade in and out of sceneries. The network had never dealt with actual combat. Previously, up until that point, comedy were replete with phony farms, flawless grins, and nothing significant. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and the Fling. Television was meant to be like that. However, Lear had little interest in him. His goal was to demonstrate what was already taking place in people's homes. Mom didn't run away from suffering or politics. She entered it head-on. She was created Toby Archie Bunker's antithesis. Ma was angry, hard-working, and conservative, while Archie wasn't censored, liberal, and well-educated. She wasn't kind only to win people over. She faced everything: Nixon, alcoholism, abortion, Vietnam, mental homosexual rights, menopause, race, and sickness. Nothing was forbidden. The personality of her black housekeeper, Florida Evans, made privilege and racism the main themes of the narrative. Additionally, when in November 1972, Dilemma premiered, 2 months prior to Roe v. Wade, 6.5 million of people witnessed Ma's decision to undergo an abortion. Everything was proven at that one time. The nation was prepared. Though the show achieved ratings of 24.7, 23.5, 24.9, and 25.0 in the Nielsen Top 10, its initial 4 seasons. Lear selected Tuahu, New York, as the location for his goal was to demonstrate that politics wasn't limited to underprivileged areas. There were fissures even in affluent suburbs. Tuahu was full of high middle-class educated people, liberals, even with spotless lawns and stocked wine racks. There were still significant contrasts and family disputes. Among them was Maude. Additionally, because she wasn't flawless, more people could relate to her. She was trying, loud, bewildered, and furious. However, Arthur didn't desire not initially. 3 times, she said no. She believed that she was too tall. Her voice was very deep and she was ancient. Her age was 49. She believed that people desired little, sweet women who resembled that girl's. Lear needed to personally persuade her in New York. He was honest with her. She was the kind of strong, independent woman that American women needed to see. DN single quotes to get smaller. When he assured her that he would find someone else if she didn't like the script, she agreed. However, she switched to a different television since she liked the script. There were issues even with Walter Finley's casting. Bill Macy didn't seem like a husband on TV. He was not conventionally tall, balding, and attractive. He appeared to be someone's accountant, according to executives. However, Lear battled. Since Ma's husband ought not to be a role model, he ought to be genuine. Viewers didn't require the ideal man. Someone who resembled the man in the adjacent room was what they needed. Later on, Macy would make made news once more in 1974 when he yelled a yell and dropped his pants at the Emmys. Filthy joke. Ma was excluded from consideration for an Emmy by CBS. Then Adriana Barrow was chosen to play Ma's daughter, Carol Trainer. She was 28. Arthur was 40-9. There was a true 21-year gap. It made every claim on employment, birth control, and feminism feels authentic. Barrow has recently received a Tony Award nomination for Grease. She was prepared for the big screen. That generational conflict was what Lear desired. He desired a daughter who resembled Thea's mother, still figuring out the old world in a new one. In the background, My possessed a feature that virtually no other sitcom in 1972 did. A group of female authors, Susan Lear said that male writers didn't write, so Harris, who would go on to develop The Golden Girls, joined the writing staff, possessed the ability to write about women. Ma's Dilemma was written by her, Irma Kalish and Austin Joinita as well. They contributed to writing about late life, domestic abuse, and menopause. Pregnancy, as well as the silent suffering of women attempting to strike a balance between marriage and identity. These were female authors of what they were aware of what men did not imagine. B. Arthur had the last word on each episode that have to do with women's difficulties. Her contract stated as much. If Ma appeared in a script, she rejected it because it was too soft, too artificial, or too hysterical. She had witnessed too many women didn't sound like women in plays written by males. She desired Maude to feel authentic. In 1972, such control was practically unheard of for actresses. It blew up when Ma debuted. Almost immediately, it received a Nielsen rating of 25.0 by the 50 million Americans watched each week. By the end of its first month, that was 1/4 of the whole nation. Nothing had ever been seen on Tuesday nights. Don't enjoy it. Advertisers lined up as well. General Motors and Procter & Gamble, they paid top dollar because they wanted Ma's viewers. Middle-class, education-class Americans who have the ability to spend money. When the shows on abortion were broadcast, all the major sponsors withdrew. However, the audience didn't. They remained. Of the just 3 of the approximately 200 CBS affiliates nationwide declined to broadcast the initial episodes. Illinois had to. One in Detroit reconsidered after demonstration. This level of support was unprecedented for a production that matter folks who are uneasy. That was the main idea. Lear wished for no one to get away. He desired for them to observe. Following MOD's success, other networks hurried to. ABC and NBC started producing their own sitcoms about issues. The Ancient World of Green Acres and Beverly Hillbillies came to an end. 5 of Lear's programs were among the top 10. By 1974, and they were all related to something. Within the authors of Maude had no intention of altering the course of television history. In 1972, all they wanted was prize money. Zero Population Growth was a group that was providing $10,000 for any sitcom that addressed the concept of population control. Expansion. As a result, the authors began making jokes. Perhaps someone would do vasectomies. Get cut. There might have been a punchline, but it didn't seem powerful enough. Norman Lear looked at that moment, at the group, and expressed it clearly. Maude needs to conceive. That was the only thing. Manner in which others would listen. What began as a playful cash brainstorming session evolved into one of the most shocking tales ever shown on American television. The author, Susan Harris, didn't merely speculate on the possible reactions of a 47-year-old lady to being pregnant. She went out and spoke with women who had experienced it firsthand. Genuine anxieties, genuine decisions, late-life pregnancies. She took a seat and listened to people discuss their age, family, finances, and health. She didn't tug. Quotes from pure. She dragged them out of living rooms. Thus, when Ma stated that it didn't sound like acting, and I had no idea what to do, it had the sound of someone's mother, neighbor, or aunt, and that's why it struck so forcefully. However, not everyone desired to hear it. CBS withdrew the funds just 1 day prior to filming. They were unwilling to carry it out. No, they said. They suggested that perhaps the entire project should be abandoned. However, Norman Lear refused to give up. He informed CBS that they could either broadcast the programs or discover Ma's time slot will be taken by another show, and the value of that time slot was millions, that the show was already popular. Strong ratings were obtained. Advertisers were pleased. CBS was aware they gave in because they stood to lose more by refusing. The taping continued. CBS, however, had one requirement. They desired a figure who was in opposition to abortion, not for discussion but to maintain equilibrium. Thus, the authors provided Ma Friend, a mother of 4 who was expecting her 5th child. She didn't support abortion. She declared she wouldn't terminate the pregnancy even though she couldn't afford to have additional children. She only appeared in a single episode, but her part was a game changer. Rather than a one-sided message, the show turned into a discussion, and oddly enough, that the tale was strengthened by a small amount of network pressure. B. Arthur, who performed at first, Maude, didn't give it any thought. She didn't have a strong political opinion on the script. She simply believed it to be a lovely tale. Later, though, it struck her. She was raised in a tiny Maryland town. She recalled the customs of the past regarding pregnancy. In those days, even though it was illegal, it nonetheless took place. Then the letters began to come flooding in. There are many of them. Some were painful, some insightful, and some furious. Read them all. The authors weren't crazy, she said. They were both human. And years later, she said that she wasn't sure if she would have concluded the show in the same manner. When the shows were broadcast, the response was more subdued than anyone had anticipated on November 14th and November 21st, 1972. Simply, 7,000 letters of protest were received, just as CBS stations declined to broadcast it. One in Peoria, Illinois, and one in Champaign. For a national program that addresses abortion, it felt like a gentle landing. TV sponsors such as General Mills and PepsiCo failed to pull out in secret. Their executives expressed their surprise. The criticism wasn't more severe. Additionally, since this occurred 2 months prior to Roe Wade's, even though abortion was legal, the majority of viewers still thought it was something distant, not a genuine issue in their own life, but rather something that other people faced. Thus, it persisted for a while, but all changed when the replays began in August 1973. In January, Roe v. Wade had been decided. Abortion was now permitted. It wasn't merely an act. The law was in effect. The U.S. Catholic Conference had been planning, observing, and coordinating for months. When 40 CBS stations declined to air the replays when they were released, that was 20 times more. Compared to earlier. More than 17,000 objection letters were sent to CBS. Each and every sponsor put no business purchased a commercial. The episodes had to air on CBS. Without any advertisements. Public service announcements were played during the breaks. The program lost $600,000 every time it happened. For the first time, CBS historically, they posted a warning that viewers could find the content upsetting. Moreover, a tale that had previously broadcast discreetly suddenly became a nationwide sensation. The Catholic Conference kiss camping was so powerful that it compelled significant adjustments. They viewed the episodes. Repeatedly, underlining each line they felt went too far. When his local station refused to pull, the Archbishop even resigned from a TV advisory group. The reruns, and they arrived on CBS at the ideal moment. Following a change in the law, their efforts not only made headlines but also had an impact during the height of terror. The industry was alarmed by it. No network would discuss abortion for almost 10 years once more. However, despite the noise, something else took place. Maude's predicament. 65 million people saw it. At the time, that accounted for 31% of the U.S. population. It's 41% of the TV viewers on those evenings were captured, and that was with 40 stations that won't broadcast it. Despite not having complete coverage, the episodists became some of the most popular and contentious programs ever produced. It was an obvious message. People observed. They didn't look away. They bent closer. Viewership was unaffected by controversy. It's fed it. This proved something significant. According to Lear afterward, the most noisy, not all voices were the majority. The truth could be handled by most Americans. They didn't require softening. 2 episodes of Maude were scheduled by CBS in August 1973 for a broadcast in the summer. They had previously broadcast in November of 1972. The plot was straightforward. Maude, a determined woman in her late 40s, learns she is thinking about getting an abortion because she is pregnant. When it debuted, 7,000 only 2 affiliate stations declined to air it after receiving objection letters. However, this time, everything was just something significant had changed between the first and second broadcasts. January 2, 1973, Roe v. Wade was signed into law. Abortion was now permitted everywhere. America, and the nation was divided. Abruptly, what had previously been observed when political communications began to resemble dramatic drama. What was once a daring tale now seems like a battlefield. It was unexpected by CBS. They believed they were merely occupying a time slot. However, over 17,000 protest letters were delivered to their offices this time. Nearly 2 local concerns overnight resulted in roughly 40 stations declining to broadcast. The repeat. In CBS's history, it was the largest affiliate revolt. Behind the scenes, the chess pieces were being moved by a young bishop, James S. Roush. Bishop had been chosen General Secretary of the United States at the age of just 44. Catholic Conference. He didn't demonstrate in the streets or yell on TV. He was a letter writer. His campaign appeared to be a military endeavor. Nearly 20,000 Catholic priests were given precise instructions on how to exert pressure on CBS. Station managers, advertisers, and affiliates. The letters instructed them on how to say who to contact and when to call. The objective was obvious. Ensure that no episodes were broadcast. He described CBS's decision as reckless, particularly since children could watch the show when it aired. Roush didn't merely end it. He created a system that transformed the indignation of one group into a national storm. His silent coordination turned into a blueprint that would be used for decades by various religious organizations. Archbishop John F. Whelan followed. He had been a member of the Hartford Program Advisory Group for WTIC television. However, when he quit because that station chose to play the reruns nevertheless, he did not simply walk away silently. He revealed it to the world. One had been viewed as mild for years. Despite forward thinking within the church, he was in favor of women holding leadership positions. He spoke with religious leaders. His red line, however, was this problem. His others were able to act boldly because of resignation. If someone is interested in, he was resigning. Others were at liberty to speak up, write letters, resign from their positions, and continue the battle. The demonstration continued after titles or letters. It turned into a personal matter. The man behind Maude, Lear, began receiving dead fetal pictures in the mail. His home was visited by many. To prevent him from driving, they laid down in front of his vehicle. They did the same to CBS founder William S. in New York Paley. These were not haphazard deeds. They were timed, prepared, and focused. They were intended to frighten. Although controversy was nothing new to Lear, he had seen it before. It was more than simply it has to do with him. It was about getting him to quit creating stories. Didn't want to be informed. And it was successful. He was shaken. Everyone in the industry take note. Television had never witnessed anything like the economic consequences. The evenings when the reruns broadcast on August 14th and August 24th, 1973, and not a single business sponsor conducted not one. For the first time in television history, a major network program was broadcast in prime time without any paid promotion. CBS has to provide public commentary during the breaks.